Thank you for joining me on this video. I really do appreciate your time. I want to bring to you something interesting in this talk, and I'm really grateful that you're here with me now. The truth is the past, the present, the future. What was, is, and will be. It's what happened and was happening, but certainly what's going to happen. The wisdom of the future is by far the most important. Two classes of people will develop on the earth. One will be on the side of right, one will be on the side of wrong. On the side of wrong, they'll have truth and error mingled together. But on the side of right, we're going to try to gather up all the rays of truth. It's a ceiling into the truth. But really, I have to step back a little bit and I think talk about creation, the created week. Look at this. I'm looking here right at some bananas behind me growing, and it's just so amazing to be here in Costa Rica. The hand of creation as it came forth from the Father's hand. The earth was not like it is today. Today we see rugged, tall mountains. Behind me is a very tall mountain, and there's rugged, steep caverns and cliffs you can fall off, and deep valleys that are hard to get to, and it's some places is so rugged. But in the early creation, according to creation scientists, the earth was more like rolling hills. It's a place where you can walk and you can enjoy nature more fully. I mean, we look at a big mountain like that and we're just kind of awed by the awesome size of it, the mass and this structure. But when we look at it, it is really kind of chaotic compared to what was in the creation. But you see, after creation, I believe it was 1800 years after creation, there was a great flood. There was a cataclysmic event that destroyed the earth surface, and it was broke up. So that's the way it is today. But in the beginning, the earth was beautiful. The hills were flowing. There was beautiful lakes and streams, no big swampy lagoons like we have. You can imagine the earth as beautiful as it could be, and it wasn't in no way under a curse. Today we see this under a curse. Like we look at this and you see the leaves, they die, they decay. In the world before, could never have decayed. In the world of bliss, the world that was created before the curse. Imagine flowers of thousands of varieties, just with the most beautiful fragrance, just filling the air. And nice, down here's a nice stream, nice little flowing river, just so easy to just enjoy and walk through, at your feet. Amazing, the creation, how it would have been. But when I was in school, the teacher was telling us that God made evolution. He said something about germs and molecules. There was some kind of like amoebas or whatever they were that we evolved from, and somehow we came out of the water and there was an explosion, and it was like I couldn't really understand it. And then he said something about that we evolved into monkeys. But my little mind said, teacher, how come we're going home to celebrate God's son's birthday if we came from monkeys? That's how I phrased it. And his mind, or his mouth, just dropped, and he said, I don't know, no one ever asked me that before. But I was questioning evolution versus creation. I just want to skip through this, but bring you the essence of some things that you may not have considered before. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I just have to be not too afraid to say it, what it's been shown to me, just share it, and I hope it doesn't make you think, well, where's Kip coming from that he gets this information from? And I lose you for some of the important stuff that I'm building a foundation that I need to share, I must share with you. Okay, I was shown in a video. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story just quickly about something I should maybe be sharing with you in the future. I don't always know. I don't have everything written down how I'm supposed to deliver it. And maybe this is what hesitated me for the last 30 years of getting to these talks. So I just have to just be courageous and don't be afraid to lose some people that don't want to hear it the way I have to say it or how I am presenting it. But one time I was with my friend Richard, and I said, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said to Richard, show Rob the video of the X-ray of the mountain. And he's looking at me with this look, and it's got this like real like puzzled look, like, what do you mean, like X-ray of the mountain? And I'm thinking, I said, well, he didn't say anything, but I said, the movie, like the video of the X-ray of the mountain, where God blew all the giants in the pile, you know, and it was like the king's scepter and the gold and the jewels, everything was blown into the big pile. Like after the flood, God blew the bodies in a pile. The X-ray of the mountain, I said. And he's looking at me going, what are you talking about? And I'm thinking, what am I talking about? How do you X-ray a mountain? And then it's at that point that I realized, I'm not sure if it was a vision or a dream or a video or how he showed me it. But I didn't know that I didn't see it until I said, show Rob the video. You see, so in many different ways, I was shown things that are so amazing. And I certainly had a very interesting learning curve, a very rapid learning curve. And so that's why I'm going to condense it. I want to condense it for you to give you the highlights of this. So some of the things I'm going to say are obviously going to be a little bit different because this is inspiration for the end. In the time of the end, biblical knowledge would increase. Now, I say biblical, well, is it outside of the Bible? You know? So in looking at this creation concept, the idea, first thing we see, that I see in the early part of the Genesis, is he makes the heavens and the earth, and then he makes man in the crowning act. So here's man made in the image, the very image of his maker. So when the angels had looked upon man, they must have said, wow, they're made in God's own image. They must have recognized something special about this new order of creation, Adam and Eve. Remember, this is a new world, new creatures, and new creation. So we see that God made the heavens and the earth, but the earth was without form. So the earth was a new, as I mentioned, it was a new field. It was going to be actually a place where the battle between good and evil would be fought on this plane. Okay, so we're seeing here early on that there's an exact account that God created man in his very own image, that the human race did not evolve, that that's being taught in our school systems. It doesn't say that man evolved from a lower form of some degree of development over time, like, you know, how that's taught. It's just straight that God made man in his own image and formed man from the dust of the ground. Now, even though man was formed from the dust, he was still a son of God. Imagine. The animals were made in such a way that they can appreciate kindness and show affection and have love for one another, their own kind, respect for man, even sport about and play with man, but they would have no divine communication with their Creator, and which was the Spirit of the Father, the Holy Spirit, to help man in his walk and help him. It's just the mind of the Father to help us understand the mind of the Father. So to say that man evolved from monkeys is really removing the dignity that was given to man, that he was really a son of the Most High God, created in his image. And this is quite a bit different than saying, oh yeah, we evolved from monkeys. What kind of foundation or footing is that for the human race? And I guess in the beginning, when we see in chapter 1, verse 29, man's diet was given to him, and in verse 30, the animal's diet was given, and we don't see the animals eating one another. So in the first part of creation before the fall of man, the diet would consist of vegetables, fruits, all the herb of the field, it says. Okay, so you can read some of this. You can read this on your own. You know, in 6 days, literal days, he made the heavens and the earth. And we can see this is important. We can look at that a little bit later. That God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let there be for signs and for the seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night, and the stars also. And then God said, let us make man in our own image, after our own likeness, and let them have dominion over the fishes of the seas and the fowls of the air. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female, he created them. Definitely a place of stewards over all creation of the earth. And it was perfect in its form. And man was created perfect in his image of God. His mind was in harmony with his maker. His powers were well balanced. All his characters would have been noble, and he would have operated from love as the action from all his works. But we know the change came over. We're going to take a look at that. You see in Hebrews 1:3, man was in the image. He was to resemble the Creator's image. So though made of the dirt, we were still invested with the Spirit and something very special. It was dirt, but the molding of the Father, he made something special in making man. Maybe a lot of people aren't so special today, but we're so far degenerated from the beginning, when this perfect being, pure heart, passions, and appetites were under the control of reason and sound mind. They were happy, they were holy, they were bearing the image of their Maker. It would have been easy for them to walk in a perfect obedience to the will of their Maker. And also, I believe, I saw in some creation accounts, Glenrose University, that was Karl Baugh, first turned me on to the idea that man was created he had a very lofty stature, but prior to that, they would have probably had the same covering that the angels had. And had they continued to walk in all the Creator's ways, then this robe of light would have continued to enshroud them. But there they were, this beautiful pair of a very tall structure. We might have been up to their knees. If you search giants in those days, giants on the earth, just Google that, YouTube it. There's so much evidence about why were things so placed in such a way that it makes sense. Wow, if giants built them, then that would be a perfect reason why all these things were created the way they were, if they were giants. The way some of these things, it says, well, how would they get a crane to do that? But if he was a giant, he could have picked up the rock and put him on top. And so we can see this kind of evidence. With all this beautiful scenes that would be with Adam would be able to see and witness, and all these beauties of this Creator, wouldn't God want him to share that with somebody special? I think in the same way that God creates man, because he wants to share with us something special. So without that perfect, without Eve, I guess he would have failed to have that perfect happiness. So it was to really make his happiness complete, this companion God gave him. If we came from monkeys, and the way that kind of defrauds our origin, it takes away the dignity of that you're really a son of the Most High God, but not something that just evolved from a lower intelligent species. I'm just thinking about when Moses said to the angel of the wilderness, he said to the Lord, it says in the King James, but he said, show me your glory. Okay, are you getting that? I thought I had to interject this, come on to you again a little more fresh than in the middle of the night. Some of them adding those thoughts. I'm tired. I'm not giving it the enthusiasm that it needs, but I want you to consider this. There he is, the angel of the covenant, the prince of the Most High God, tells Moses, okay, hide in the cleft of the rock. In Exodus 33, verse 22, Moses asked for this. We can ask for it too. Show your glory. He says, show me your glory. So he says, are you sure, Moses? You better hide into that rock. You better get far inside that cave. And so turning his face the other way, so most of the light would go that way, in that direction, but his backside shining towards the cave, and then having to put his hand out, because his hand is not as shiny as his body, with his hand shading some of the light. And then Moses, it wasn't like, okay, the hand will be enough, you can be there, it's going to shave out. No, and all of that, Moses had to hide as far as he could into that cave. Now think about it. Okay, if that was, if that's the angel of the covenant and that's his presence, then Adam in his unfallen state had to have that same presence, that he would not have to hide in the cleft of the rock. So in other words, so now you can see, well, Adam, wow, what a shining glory he had to have, being in the image of the Most High God. God is light, and Adam was bathed in light. He was shining. His face was shining like maybe the sun. Because in Revelation, we can see the great prince, he's back on the earth. It shines 7 times brighter than the sun. And the sun, it says, is not even needed, the light of the sun, because his face outshines all of that. But I'm just trying to bring you the idea of the glory of man, the glory we had, the light, the presence, the world unfallen. Think of that great light. And it's just like, well, okay, he was a shiny being. No, with all that light came such a glorious feeling inside, such a peace, and equivalent to how great his light was. There was such a great peace that he had. So when he left the garden, when he was kicked out of the garden, he was just like always wanted to get back into the garden, back home. So now Adam kicked out of the garden. He's not really complaining so much about the idea that he's going to die. And we're going to talk about this. But so he's complaining and he wants to get back into the garden. It's the world of light, indescribable light. So maybe it wasn't so much that he missed the garden, but what he was missing was his covering, was that peace that he had, that oneness with his Maker. You see, today we maybe don't crave it enough. We really have to cry out for this, to pray, Father, please send me your Spirit, greater glimpses of your Son, of the truth, of all this imagery, of all these, the history of our wanderings and the future promises, all that it brings. All right, so I think I covered this thought I wanted to inject. I just wanted to say that, yeah, if Moses had to hide from the prince of the angels, the angel of the covenant, then that would have to tell you that Adam was not a six foot tall midget. Definitely, he had this existence that could endure that kind of light. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them. Now, who were these men? And how big were these men that daughters were born unto them? Daughters were born, not angels. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So you notice it says the sons of God. Okay, I better talk to you about this. I didn't want to go here. I don't know. Well, this might have a part 2 because no. Oh, this is like, I'm going to lose some people right here. I have such an amazing something to share with you. But I was afraid that if I share, and I'm going to lose people because, because they're not going to agree with a lot of this stuff. So that's why I hesitate to share. But I can't. I just have to go with the truth and do my best. Okay. Because 99% of the preachers out there are telling you, like half the world knows about the book of Enoch and the book of and the Nephilims, and even the churches and a lot of my friends that are reading the Bible test is like, is that what you think? And it's like, okay. Now, if we don't agree on this, okay, fine. We can please hang around for something more. Maybe say, well, who cares if there's giants and all that? It's not about that right now. It's just about the truth. We've been lied to. Okay. When it says Nephilim, it comes from the words, the sons of light. The Nephilims were the fallen sons of light. Now, so because angels were cast to the earth, right? They're saying that these sons of light had to be angels, but no, think about it. There was the sons of light. There was the converted camp and the unconverted camp. And the sons of God, in other words, the sons of the Most High, the sons of the YH, whatever Tetragrammaton was, the sons of the Most High looked upon the daughters of men. So they were like the converted looking at the unconverted. That's why they were sons of light. They were sons of the Spirit. They had the oracles. They had all that they were to do to carry this all the way down through the ages. And what was the most important warning that they could have to bring back to you today is be careful of the woman that you meet or that you might fall for, because if they're in the other camp, that was it. Think about it. And then when Yeshua walked on the earth, he said, as in the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. What's wrong with that? Eating and drinking, marrying and giving marriage. Well, maybe they were doing it in excess. Okay, so let's go back here and take a look at this quickly, because I got myself in trouble by opening this up now, so I'm going to keep it going. So it says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, not talking about angels, and daughters were born. It doesn't say half demon, half daughter now. It says the sons of God. So that's referring to the sons of the converted. I was trying to show you that, not just sons of angels. Because it says they saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, that they took wives for themselves, which they chose. So and it says, the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, not man half demon, for also his flesh, you see, yet his days shall be 120 years. Their days should be 120 years. Well, we know they were living over to 900, up past 900, and suddenly they're down to 120. You see, their years were going to be shortened right there. Now, the next thing he's going to do is talk about giants. So they're also going to lose their stature. So I'm trying to say that Noah was a giant. It wasn't that Adam and Eve were... Noah was a giant, Adam was a giant. It wasn't until after the flood that the man started losing their stature. That's why you see such a big boat. So they were giants. And so just the way he says their ages would be shortened to 120, so would their stature. So I'm showing to you that they were giants in those days, that Adam was a giant. He had many times the vitality that we have today, or else our race would cease to exist. Okay. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, to the days of Noah, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. So you can't have an angel. It says the sons of God.
It's not saying that they're demons. You can't have a demon marrying an angel and then giving birth to a giant. I mean, a demon marrying a woman. It says no. They were fair to look at. That's why they chose a wife. It says, and they gave bore daughters, and they were giants in those days. Okay, and also they were bathed in light. So I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to try to wrap this text up. And so it says, and they bore child to them, the same became mighty men, which were old men of renown. So their children were also going to be big. So this is why the Creator did not need men. I mean, he saw in his wisdom that they didn't have to have such a long life to make a judgment for this life or the life hereafter. And so he shortened their life. He shortened their lifespan. And also, at the flood, there was a curse that came on the planet. And so the planet lost. There was a curse at the fall of man. And then there was another curse at the destruction of that antediluvian world when they were, the days of Noah. There was another curse. So that's when the ages got shorter. Because in the first 10 generations, they were all big and tall, lived long. And then suddenly, in the next 10 generations, you look at them, and they're much smaller. Now, I want to say that you think about the Philistines, how Goliath was 10 feet tall. And then, like they were grasshoppers. They're like grasshoppers to those Philistines, right? So what I was saying is that what happened is they went down. Some people were going down different. They were like, you can still have a basketball player 8 feet tall today, and someone that's under 3 feet tall. So not everyone's the same height. So what happened is some families got smaller quicker than the others. Like, it didn't affect every family the same way, but basically the races as a whole got smaller. And Abraham would have been from a smaller family, because those Israelites, they had a smaller genealogy, or smaller height to them, because it's obvious, because some of the other nationalities were bigger, you see. So, but what I read in the book of Yasher, that Adam was a giant, because it was after that the race got smaller. So how big Abraham was, I don't know. But in a couple hundred years, they were shrinking. That's the point. And so I think I made it clear. They were mighty men of renown, giants in those days, that made in the image of their Most High. And I still have something very special to share with you about why I'm bringing up the image of man and what that's going to be compared to when we look at the image of the sun. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about in an upcoming video. He plants him a special garden called the Garden of Eden, and this would be Adam's home. Adam would live in this garden of paradise, which would probably be the most amazing garden you can just imagine. You know, if you can, well, that would have been pure joy, planting and working with the soil and plants and all of that. But here, if you can imagine all the varieties of the most delicious and luscious, pure, huge fruit, the branches would have been so heavy, weighed down, and I guess in the beginning there, I don't know, you could have plucked a fruit and maybe it would have stayed there forever, kept coming back, because he was in the celestial world. There was no corruption. So it was a super gift from the Almighty for the holy pair. Maybe it was like a wedding gift. So Adam made his home in the boughs of the trees. There he would have fashioned the trees in such a way that he could have made, when you're working with a vine, you can train it anyways. You can make a bench. You got the idea. But he could have, that was his home. Living in the canopies of the trees. There was no strong winds, no rain coming down, the earth was watered from the ground, it says. There would have been no mosquitoes nipping at them. There might have been mosquitoes there, but they wouldn't have been after blood. So, yeah, that was just the perfect world that Adam was in. But even to do it a step better, God created a garden in the midst of this paradise earth. God even made it one step better and created the Garden of Eden. And this is where he placed Adam and Eve, and that was their new home in the garden. That's where they would build their home. And so man is given a garden paradise where he can participate in co-creating all of this goodness, right? To actually work the soil, but not in the toilsome way that after his fall, not the way we have to do it today. But yet Adam took part in working in this garden, but it was very delightful, and all his needs would have been met there. And you imagine the kind of fruit salad that they could have put together. All right, so now in the middle of this paradise garden, surrounded by trees, in the middle of those trees in the middle of the garden was the tree of life. It says here in Genesis 2:15, and then it says, and Yah took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So they had that function of dressing and keeping the garden. And he commanded that man, saying that of every tree of the garden that you may surely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for the day and you do that, you will surely die. That was Genesis 2:17. I'm just backing it up to Genesis chapter 2, verse 9 is, and out of the ground made Yah to grow every tree that is pleasant in the sight of good for food, and the tree of life also is in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil were also in the garden. So these trees were probably they could have been close together. One tree would perpetuate life, and one tree would be a test of allegiance, a test of faith to the obedience, whether Adam would walk in all his command. Can we put our imagination back there to the time when this creation of the earth was complete and perfect and no corruption? There was a time on the earth, it says in Job 38:7, that the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Okay, so creation was complete now. It says here that the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And Yah saw that everything that he made was good, and behold, everything was good. Eden bloomed on the earth. Adam and Eve had free access to the tree of life. There was not a single bit of taint of corruption or sin on the earth. No shadow of death. Nothing to mar this great, grand creation. And it says the morning stars sang together in Job 38:7, and all the sons of God shouted together. So this was a time before the fall of man. What a day that would, if we can put our minds back there. But we see that the Mighty One had laid the foundations of the earth. He dressed the whole earth in this, clothed it with beauty, and gave man his home. But the point I wanted to bring up now is the idea that it was in 6 literal days that he created the earth. I'm not going to say, I think it was 6 days. No, it says 6 days he created, his work was accomplished. And then God rested on the 7th from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because he had rested from all his work. It wasn't a wearisome work. It was just, he would have rested reflecting on the beauty, the perfection of his work, that he was worthy. He was the divine author of all this, and he was well pleased with his work. But in resting upon it, we see that God sanctified it, and he set it apart as a day of rest for man, that man would follow the example of the Creator. Man was to rest on this sacred day, and that on this day he can more reflect upon what took place on the 6 days of God's work, that all this work of heaven and earth were created. And at the same time, it brings his mind up to the heavens, to the glory of his Creator, that he would rejoice in the creation, and it would be continually bolster up his spirit to see the awe of his Abba's creation. And all of this given to the holy pair just to help to build and to fill their hearts with reverence and admiration for their Creator. So in Eden, God set up this memorial of his work of creation in placing his blessing upon the 7th day. And the Sabbath was committed to Adam, the father, and basically the representative of the whole human race. He had the Sabbath. In chapter 2, we can see God established the Sabbath, and Adam would have had the Sabbath. Now, it makes me also question, what else did Adam have? Because the Sabbath was carved on the first table of stones. Moses brought down 10 commandments, and the Sabbath was one of those commandments. And so perhaps possible that Adam also was given these, not that he needed them to keep him holy, but they were like a guide, like a transcript of just the character, between like the two great laws: love God and love man. Those on these. Yeshua said, on all these two hang, love for God and love for your fellow man as you love yourself. So that's the idea. But so why wouldn't Adam, who's the head of the human race, have that he would be given the Sabbath? The Father would keep the Sabbath. The angels were keeping the Sabbath. The morning stars sang together, it says. And so perhaps the Sabbath is something that has been going on for a long, long time, long before the earth was created. Because he says he made the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form. The heavens, no. We saw in earlier talks that Lucifer was rebelled from heaven. He was expelled from heaven. And so perhaps one of his arguments could have been that we should no longer be under the law. But I don't think that's really a salvational issue, whether you would say that Adam had the 10 Commandments or not. But they were so important that Moses had, in a very big way, brought these. Maybe he just reminded the people of what Adam had. Because Adam, this Sabbath was to be and observed by all the families of earth that should dwell on all times, that God, sovereign, was their creator. He was the rightful owner of their worship, that it was his hands that created all these things, and even that they were the subjects of his creation. But yeah, this institution was to commemorate God's creative power for mankind for all time, and not really restricted to any people, because we see today it would be called even the Jewish Sabbath. But in chapter 2, God rested on that Sabbath, and he's been around for some time. So he's probably been doing that for some time. Maybe this is not the first planet that he made the Sabbath. But God saw that the Sabbath was essential for man. Even in paradise, he needed man to lay aside his own interests and pursuits for that one day in 7, that he can more fully comprehend, the works of his Maker. Imagine Adam with his curious mind, just doing this and that, and learning about this and learning about that, and all these things that he could do with his creative ability to construct all kinds of things he could have done. He was in God's image. He had a lot of potential, but God knew that he needed to set aside all of this one day to reflect more fully upon the goodness of his Creator, that he needed the Sabbath to remind him more vividly of the Creator, and to continue to awaken a greater attitude, a greater gratitude, a greater appreciation for life. But more importantly, that this all came from the hand of a loving Creator, and he made it all in just 6 days. Now that's an amazing story. So Adam had this. He can rejoice that, wow, my Father made this world in just 6 days, and the angels rejoiced. And so there was that time of rejoicing on the 7th day. That was the original time. Well, let's say, how does the Sabbath play out in the future when all things are pointing to Christ, it says? And so we're going to take a look at which laws we're no longer under and which laws we are still under. Or are we under the law? More about the Sabbath and a later talk. In Psalms 19, verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. So all this beauty that clothed the earth is to be a token of his love, that we'd always see in this nature, in the trees and the flowers, all that decorates this planet, the animal kingdom. This should all speak to us of our Father's love and of his creative ability, and remembering that he did all this in 6 days, and on the 7th he rested, ever pointing the Sabbath to the one who made it. And so, the creation, the Sabbath itself kind of is an invitation, bidding man to open the great book of nature and trace back this origin. We're going to look at this idea that the week was created at the same time the Sabbath was created. And this institution of the 7-day cycle should remind us of the Sabbath, and again bringing us back to the handiwork of our Creator. Adam and Eve, though they were created innocent and perfect and holy, they were not placed beyond the possibility of wrongdoing, right? They were free moral agents. They were capable of appreciating the wisdom of the Creator's character and his justice and his requirements to rest as he did on the Sabbath. And they had full liberty to yield or to not to yield. You see, we know the tree of knowledge of good and evil was definitely to be a test of their allegiance to the Creator. But I just want to throw this out. What about the Sabbath? Was the Sabbath also to be a test for Adam? God rested on the Sabbath. But what if Adam said, no, not me. I will not. I'm not saying that Sabbath is done away with. Maybe it is. This is a topic we're going to talk about in a later day, which laws were changed and which laws were not. But I believe before this couple could be rendered eternally secure, they had to basically be tested and to basically have to put a check on to see if their desire for self-indulgence would if they would yield. And that was the fatal passion that lay at the foundation of Satan. He was about himself. And so God put this tree that stood in the midst of the garden there as a test. And so while they could eat of every other tree, this one tree, they were forbidden to eat of it. And if they were, they would taste the pain of death. But I believe too that it was a test, and had they endured the test, maybe that trial, maybe that tree, that forbidden tree, would have been forever placed out of their reach. But it was to be, I think, of a perpetual security for not only this world, but all worlds, that, yeah, what God wants to see, if maybe there's not a tree of knowledge of good and evil on other worlds, but certainly there was a test to this new order of creation, Adam and Eve, made in the very image of their Maker. So there was a test, certainly, and we're going to see that they failed. So if we consider this, we can see that there was one tree that they were forbidden to eat from, and if they were to rest with their Creator, this was another law, a condition that they would have to be obedient to. So isn't this a form of a law? Now, even though Adam was placed under divine law, it would have been a burden to him. Maybe there was a test, but that test would have been removed. But I believe at a later date, yes, definitely all temptations will be removed. But even for the angelic host, I brought that up in an earlier talk, that the law came as an awakening to them, that there was even such a law. And so whether they had the Ten Commandment law in the worlds above or not, there was certainly a law of conduct. We can see that, I believe that, yes, this is not a brand new thing in the universe, God creating worlds. So his statutes probably been around for a while. So we see that he was asked to do something in obedience to the tree. We covered that already. On the pain of death, he would taste death had he ate from this forbidden tree. Or whether Adam maybe disobeyed the Sabbath, that would have also been, if he was just going to not rest with his father, that would have been an act of revolt. And so we can see that man was placed under divine law. The Creator might have created Adam and Eve in such a way that it was impossible for them to transgress his law. He might have withheld the hand of Adam from touching the forbidden fruit. But in this case, man would have been not a free moral agent, but more like a robot without freedom to choose. His obedience would not have been voluntary, but forced. So this way there could be no real development of character or appreciation of the Father's character, you see? So such a course of holding Adam's hand or stopping Satan from rebelling is really contrary to the Father's character. God is too wise to know that only love can awaken love, a true love, an appreciation for Him just for who He is, and that His word would be disrespected. Just respected because it is His word. Adam was made perfect in his beginning, and he had all these noble traits of character with no evil patterns, bad habits. He had the high and super high intellect. He was made to know that in order for him to continue his existence in the garden, that it would have been perfect allegiance to the Father's will. And that would have been the condition of eternal happiness. And other than that, he would not have access to the tree of life. But had he followed in the Father's way, then obviously he would have access to this tree of life. So that might sound a little harsh, but how could it be otherwise? How could we have a world of harmony and order and structure without rules? How can it be regulated? It has to be an order of contact. So we see James talked about a law of liberty, the law of love. So this is really the law of love. Adam would have been instructed in all the ways because he was the father of our race, and so this was to be a pattern. His home was to be an example for all other families that would go forth and be fruitful and fill the earth, occupy the earth with the knowledge of the Creator's will and what it is that pleases Him. But you just consider for a moment how God placed Adam in the garden, and this was to be his dwelling place. The heavens above, the blue skies, the green carpet below, and all these. His home was woven into the jungles, like the jungle of Costa Rica. This was the handiwork of the great Creator. He was the master artist. Not like today we see people building their homes with great luxury and display and pride. But how does this bring people back to the handiwork of their Creator? Think about Adam living in that garden paradise, working in the garden, and continually seeing the works of God in nature. But once we take it to another level and we start building that concrete up, then man has a tendency to glorify his own works. If we can give less attention to the plastic world, the artificial Babylonian world, and greater attention to the simplicities of life, simple things, man would come far nearer to answering the purposes of God in their creation. This pride and ambition, they're never satisfied. But to those who can set that aside, they will find a simple, for a smaller house and a bigger garden, they would find it's just a joy that they could never find otherwise. To that early pair in Eden, they were committed to the care of a garden, to dress it and to keep it, it says. And this was not a dreary to them. This would have been pleasant, invigorating exercise. Maybe they didn't really need to exercise the same way, but it certainly would have been enjoyment for them to move about and see all the handiwork and God's appointed labor as a blessing to man. And this would occupy his mind and give strength to the body and to develop all his faculties. So Adam in his unfallen state still, it was a blessing for him to be in that garden and work that garden. It would have been his greatest joy. And that's why when he was forced to, because of his disobedience, he was driven from his beautiful home and made to struggle with the stubborn soil to gain his daily bread. And that was a different kind of labor. And it was widely different from what he had in that little pleasant occupation of the Garden of Heaven. So this new labor was also a source for Adam's own goodness and his happiness. Though he may have not at first welcomed this toilsome work in this new tough garden, in his fallen nature, this is what he needed more than anything, was stubborn soil. I think a little bit of hard work is a safeguard against temptation. So let's not regard hard work as a curse, but just look at it as an opportunity to give praise and thanksgiving in all our trials. Myself, quite often I do find myself complaining severely, and it's almost like trials just going to be put in front of me one after another until I learn the art of contentment and not complaining. I think that's largely the biggest test on mankind now then is see if they'll live their lives without complaining and murmuring like the ancient Israelites. That was their biggest downfall. They were just short on water a few days, and they started complaining and doubting their Creator who just brought them through walls of water. So it's our nature that we have to keep this check on. And our Creator who understood what was necessary for man's happiness, appointed man his work. Work in the garden, but also basically just the general principle of service. In service, man finds happiness. There's a certain kind of happiness that we can have just by bringing happiness to others. And while Adam remained true to God, Adam would be happy forever. He was to bear dominion over the earth. He had unlimited control. He named all the animals, the lion, the lamb, symbol of the work of Christ. These animals would have been not afraid of him. They would have sported around his feet. They could have played with the animals. It wasn't only after the fall of man that the fear was put into the animals. But what a world this was. And this new couple, they were not just children of the Father, but they were also students too. They were also to be instructed by an all-wise, all-loving Creator. And they were granted communion with Him, no obstructions. There was no veil between. They could sit down at the table together. Adam, whose face would have been shining almost like the sun. He had the ability to sit at the table with the Son of the Most High God, his face shines like the sun. So I'll give you an idea of this kind of world that it was before the fall. And I'm imagining that because everything was brand new to them, like how a child is so interested in seeing all these things as he's born into the world. Same like Adam would have been discovering amazing things that would have grabbed his affection and gave him a greater awareness of the Creator and greater appreciation of his work, and bringing him even a greater level of happiness that would have continued for all time. But Adam was to meet a certain fate that I'm going to start to talk about now. Let's just close this one out. And thank you for staying with me on it. I think we're going to see it's going to get more interesting now as we go. The fall of man. We're going to look at the fall, the problem, and then we're going to look at the solution.